Savannah was quiet that morning. Not the kind of quiet that comforts, but the kind that lingers after too much time alone. The kind that makes a man remember things he's tried to forget. Miles Whitaker adjusted the cuffs of his tailored navy blazer as his town car curved slowly down the gravel road leading into Bonaventure Cemetery. Spanish moss hung like ghosts from the old oaks, draping the ancient stones in soft gray veils. There were few places in Savannah that Miles would call sacred, but this was one of them. Not because he believed in the afterlife, but because this was where he came to feel something, anything. The car stopped. He didn't wait for his driver to open the door. "I'll just be a minute," he said over his shoulder. His polished shoes hit the gravel with a crunch. In his left hand he carried a bouquet of white roses. In his right, a simple brass key, Lucas's old boat locker, still locked, still untouched. Like so many things his brother left behind. It had been exactly 2 years since Lucas Whitaker died in that boating accident off the coast of Tybee. The press said it was a tragedy. The family said it was fate. Miles just called it unfinished. He rounded the narrow path between tombstones, already rehearsing the things he wouldn't say aloud. I should have called more. I should have asked harder questions. I should have known, but none of that mattered now. The marble headstone was just ahead, tall, proud, and out of place among the smaller, older graves. Like Lucas, always needing to stand out, even in death. Then he stopped. Someone was already there. A child small, maybe 7, maybe 8, kneeling in front of Lucas's grave. Her blonde hair was unbrushed, falling in loose tangles down the back of a too-thin sweater. She wore a faded skirt, sneakers too big, and held a single daisy in her hand, petals bruised from the cold. She didn't hear him approach. She was whispering something. Miles couldn't quite make out the words. Then, as if sensing him, she looked up. Blue eyes wide, glassy, rimmed with tears. So blue they stopped him where he stood. "Did you know my daddy?" she asked, voice trembling like a piano string hit too hard. Miles blinked. "I'm sorry?" She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. "Lucas Whitaker," she said, pointing at the grave. "My mommy says that's my daddy, but I never met him. I just wanted to know if he would have loved me." The words hit him with the force of a wave, not fast, not loud, but enough to drag the air from his lungs. "Lucas was my brother," he said carefully, each syllable heavier than the last. "What's your name?" "Sadie." She looked down at the flower in her hand. "Sadie Monroe." He crouched slowly, placing the bouquet of white roses at the foot of the grave. "Where's your mom now?" "She's home. I came by myself." She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. "You came here alone?" Sadie nodded. "I saved up from school lunch, took the number 12 bus. I just wanted to see him, just once." Miles stood, uncertain what to do with his hands. His mind was a thunderstorm. Lucas had a daughter, a child he never mentioned, and this girl, she had his eyes. That unmistakable Whitaker shade of sea glass blue. "Do you live far?" "West Savannah, near the paper mill," she said, almost apologetically. Miles hesitated. Every instinct in him warred logic, emotion, image. He looked down at the little girl shivering in front of his brother's grave and made a decision. "Come on," he said gently, offering his hand. "Let's get you home." She looked at it like he'd handed her a golden ticket. Then, slowly, she took it. The drive was quiet, save for the hum of tires and the occasional question from Sadie. "Do you like boats?" "Not as much anymore." "Do you have kids?" "No." "Why not?" Miles glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I guess I was always too busy." He followed her directions down cracked roads, past boarded-up storefronts and sagging porches, the kind of neighborhood the city tried to forget. "That one," Sadie said, pointing at a two-story apartment with peeling paint and rusted mailboxes. He parked at the curb and turned to her. "You sure it's safe?" She gave him a tired smile that no 7-year-old should ever have to wear. "I live here." They climbed the narrow stairwell. The door to apartment 3B was slightly ajar. Sadie pushed it open. "Mommy?" The room smelled of stale air and something metallic. On a couch near the window, a woman stirred. Thin, pale. Her scarf-covered head turned slowly toward them. Then her eyes, those same sea-glass eyes, widened in confusion. "Sadie?" she rasped. "Where have you been?" "I went to see him," Sadie whispered. "I met his brother." The woman's gaze shifted to Miles, defensive and weary. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm Miles Whitaker," he said softly. "Lucas was my brother." Something inside her broke. She looked away, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. "I didn't know he had family," she said finally. "He did," Miles replied. "Not much, but enough." Silence. Then Sadie looked between them. "He said he'd help." Clara looked up again. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity," Miles said, stepping further into the room. "It's family." For a long moment, no one spoke. Outside, the wind brushed gently against the window pane. Then Clara whispered, "I wanted to tell him. I did. But he left before I could. And then he was gone." Miles nodded slowly. "He never told me anything. But I believe you." He glanced down at Sadie, who had curled onto the couch beside her mother, resting her head on Clara's shoulder. "I'd like to help," he said, "if you'll let me." Clara hesitated, then nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Miles exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. He looked around the room, faded curtains, stacks of medical paperwork, a vase with a single artificial sunflower. The beginnings of a storm were gathering, but something in his chest had shifted. He hadn't come looking for a reason, but maybe he'd just found one. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The rain came lightly that afternoon, just enough to mist the cracked window pane in Clara Monroe's living room, softening the edges of the world outside. Inside, everything remained still except Miles. He stood awkwardly by the worn coffee table, taking in the small apartment with quiet calculation. Every detail told a story. The threadbare carpet with one corner taped down, the space heater humming in the corner like it was holding winter at bay, and the medical forms spread across the counter, carelessly stacked but well thumbed. There was no television, just a small bookshelf filled with worn paperbacks and children's puzzles with missing pieces. Sadie had drifted into a nap on the couch, curled beside her mother like a puzzle piece finally in place. Clara sat upright, watching him. Her eyes weren't the soft blue of sentiment. They were guarded like someone who'd had to weather more than just chemo and bills. "You came here for what exactly?" she asked, her voice quiet but not weak. Miles met her gaze. "To understand, and to help, if you'll let me." "You've said that twice now." "I meant it both times." Clara folded her hands in her lap. "Look, I appreciate you bringing Sadie home. I really do. But this doesn't need to get complicated. We're not looking for anything from you. I believe you." "Good," she said quickly, maybe too quickly. "But that doesn't mean you don't deserve something." She arched a brow. "And you'd be the one to decide that?" Miles paused, suddenly aware of the gulf between them. His life had been filled with private jets, boardroom takeovers, and silent retreats in Aspen. Hers was medication schedules, school lunch debts, and watching sunsets from a second-hand armchair. "Lucas never said anything," he said finally. "Not a word. I would have tried to help if I'd known." Clara let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Lucas Whitaker wasn't the sharing type, especially not when it came to his secrets. "You loved him." She looked away, jaw tightening. "I thought I did." There was a beat of silence. The rain softened, then stopped. "I worked a gala 2 years ago," she said suddenly. "Private estate out on Wilmington Island. Catering staff for the Whitaker Foundation's scholarship benefit. That was the first time I saw him." Miles sat down carefully in the wooden chair opposite her, listening. "He asked if I wanted to step out for air. Said he hated these things, that they made him feel like a fraud, and for a moment, I believed he wasn't like the others." "You didn't know who he was?" "No. Not that night. Not until weeks later when someone showed me a picture of him in the paper. By then..." She stopped, swallowing the thought. "You were already pregnant," Miles said softly. Clara nodded. "I tried calling the number he gave me. It was disconnected, no forwarding, no explanation, just gone." Miles rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. The weight of his brother's silence settled in deeper now. "Why didn't you go to the family?" he asked. Clara gave a soft, humorless smile. "Because the Whitakers don't exactly have open doors. And because I didn't want my daughter growing up believing she was someone's mistake. I figured I'd rather give her the truth than have her chasing ghosts." "She's a Whitaker," Miles said firmly. Whether Lucas owned it or not, Clara looked at him, something shifting in her expression. "And what do you plan to do with that truth, Mr. Whitaker?" "Miles," she raised a brow. "My name, it's just Miles." "All right then, Miles." Her tone softened slightly. "What is it you want here? You came to the grave, you found Sadie, and now you're sitting in my living room talking about truth and names. What's your end game?" He hesitated. The answer wasn't clean. It didn't come with a line item or contract. He'd come to the cemetery out of ritual, guilt, and habit. He expected grief, maybe closure. He didn't expect a child, or her mother, or to feel like a man slowly waking up from a very long, very successful sleep. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't walk away." Clara studied him for a long moment. Then, with a slow breath, she leaned back into the cushions. "I've been doing this alone for 7 years, she said. "Every cough, every school form, every scraped knee and doctor bill, and I've kept going because I had to. I'm not saying that for sympathy. I'm just telling you I don't need rescuing." "I didn't come to rescue you," Miles replied. "I came because it's what my brother should have done, and because Sadie, she deserves more than being a secret in someone's past." Clara's eyes flicked toward her sleeping daughter. "She's everything to me. I can see that." A pause. "And if she were mine," he added, "I'd want to be everything to her." Something flickered across Clara's face. Not trust, not yet, but something close to curiosity. Maybe even hope. "I have a friend," Miles continued, more carefully now. "A private pediatrician. She doesn't take insurance, but she's excellent. If you're open to it, I could arrange a visit for Sadie. Just routine." Clara looked conflicted. "It's not charity," he said again. "It's family." She smiled, faintly. "You Whitakers sure know how to spin that word." Miles stood, adjusting his jacket. "I'll check in tomorrow." Clara nodded slowly. "All right." As he reached the door, Sadie stirred on the couch, eyes fluttering open. "You're leaving?" "I'll be back," Miles said, stepping into the hallway. Promise. She watched him for a second, then whispered, Do you think he would have liked me? Miles paused at the threshold, hand on the doorframe. I think he would have loved you, he said quietly. Just like everyone does, once they get to know you. He stepped out into the stairwell, the air cool and damp from the rain. Down the street, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting long shadows between the buildings. Something inside him felt different now, like the world had tilted slightly on its axis, not in a way that disoriented him, but in a way that made him want to follow wherever it led. The next morning, Miles sat in the back corner of a quiet downtown cafe, stirring cream into a coffee he hadn't tasted. Rain tapped gently on the windows, and the air smelled of cinnamon and something more distant like memory. His phone sat face up on the table, untouched, even though emails buzzed in one after another. Shipping contracts, quarterly projections, a board member requesting a last-minute call. But Miles's thoughts weren't with freight lanes or quarterly targets. They were with a little girl in tattered sneakers who had looked up at him in front of a marble grave and asked, Did you know my daddy? And with the woman who'd sat across from him last night, gaunt, proud, sharp-tongued, and carried herself with more dignity than anyone in his family's world of trust funds and gala dinners. He took out his phone and tapped in a number he hadn't dialed in months. It rang once, twice, then, Benton Law Offices. Cal speaking. You ever work a guardianship case? A pause. Hello to you too, Miles. I'm serious, and I'm intrigued, but I'm also 2 sips into my first cup of coffee, so slow down. What's going on? Miles hesitated. Then he said it out loud, fully, for the first time. I think my brother had a daughter, 7 years ago, and no one in our family knew. The line went still. Okay, Cal said slowly. And you've confirmed this? Not yet, but I believe her. I believe the mother. Cal exhaled through the receiver. You're talking about a paternity case, potential heir claim, possibly contested estate rights depending on your brother's will. That's not small, Miles. I don't care if it's small. I care if it's real. Then we need proof. Miles sipped his coffee. I already ordered a DNA test, fast-tracked. Results in 3 days. Cal paused again. And you want what? Exactly? Miles looked out the window, watching a couple walk by beneath a shared umbrella. He thought of Sadie's drawing on the wall, a stick-figure family, him in the middle. I want to be ready, he said quietly, in case this turns into something bigger than a promise. By the time he arrived back at Clara's apartment, the sky had cleared. He brought fresh groceries, fruit, bread, soup, a small bouquet of pink tulips that Sadie would later place in a chipped mason jar beside the window. Clara greeted him at the door with her hair wrapped in a scarf, her skin pale but her voice steady. You really didn't need to do all that. I wanted to. She stepped aside to let him in. Well then, I hope you like canned peaches and cardboard puzzles. That's the high-end entertainment around here. He smiled faintly. You'd be surprised. I used to love puzzles. She raised an eyebrow. What happened? Started solving real ones. They weren't as fun. Sadie appeared from the hallway, wearing mismatched socks and a paper crown she'd made from an old cereal box. She threw her arms around Miles's waist before he could even react. You came back, she said, her voice muffled against his blazer. I told you I would. Clara watched the moment with something unreadable in her eyes. Then she turned and disappeared into the kitchen. Later, after Sadie had gone to her room to finish a drawing, Miles stood at the counter, unpacking groceries. Clara leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You know, when Lucas disappeared, I spent a long time asking myself what I did wrong. If I was too much, or not enough. Miles paused. You weren't the problem. She gave a short laugh. You didn't even know me. I didn't need to. I knew Lucas. A silence settled between them, honest, uncomfortable. I'm not proud of what he did, Miles continued, but I don't think he was proud of it either. I think he ran because he couldn't face it. Face you, and that's not your burden to carry. Clara looked down, her fingers absently tracing the seam of the countertop. It became mine anyway. He nodded slowly. And yet you carried it. I didn't have a choice. You did, he said softly. You could have let bitterness raise her. But you didn't. You gave her a home, love, honesty. That's more than most kids get, even the ones with both parents. Clara's eyes filled for just a second before she blinked it away. I'm not used to this, she admitted. This? Kindness, without strings. Miles set the last can down. Maybe it's not kindness. Maybe it's guilt. Guilt doesn't buy tulips, she said. He looked at her, really looked, the way her exhaustion sat just behind her eyes, how her laugh carried pain beneath it, and how fiercely she still protected the edges of her dignity. There's something else I need to tell you, he said. Clara straightened slightly. I've started a DNA test, just to confirm everything. Her expression didn't change. I thought you believed me, she said. I do, he said quickly. This isn't about doubt. It's about what comes next, about Sadie's future, legally, financially. I need to be ready. Clara nodded, her voice steady but clipped. I understand. Do what you need to do. I'm not trying to take her away from you. I didn't say you were. But I do want to be part of her life. Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up at him and said, She doesn't know how to want people yet. She's used to losing them. Miles's voice caught in his throat. She won't lose me. Clara held his gaze. Make sure of that. In the quiet that followed, the air between them shifted, not exactly softer but clearer, like two people seeing each other, really seeing, for the first time. He didn't touch her, didn't offer comfort. He simply stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, as the sun slid across the floor in golden lines. And when Sadie came back in, her drawing clutched in her hands, she handed it to Miles. This one's for you, she said. It's our house. When Mommy's all better, you can live in it too if you want. Miles stared at the crooked little house with hearts over every window. And in that moment, something cracked open in him. Not guilt, not obligation, just the quiet, undeniable pull of something that felt a lot like love. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Clara hadn't slept, not really. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant whistle of the train that passed at 2 a.m., the soft sound of Sadie breathing beside her, none of it let her mind rest. She stared at the ceiling, one arm tucked behind her head, the other draped protectively over her daughter's small frame. Miles's voice echoed in her head. She won't lose me. He meant it. That was the part that scared her most. Morning came too fast. The pale light through the blinds brushed across her face and reminded her that today wasn't just another morning. Today, the test results would come, and with them, truth. She got up quietly, careful not to wake Sadie, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. The air was crisp, quiet. Miles was already there, leaning against the counter with 2 paper cups of coffee from the cafe down the block. I let myself in, he said. Hope that's okay. She blinked at him. You always show up this early? Only when I can't stop thinking about something. She crossed her arms, pulling her cardigan tight around her. "And what were you thinking about?" He handed her a cup. "You. Sadie, what happens next?" Clara took it but didn't drink. "And?" Miles hesitated. "And that maybe it doesn't have to be complicated." She gave a soft laugh, dry as salt. "You say that like it's up to us, isn't it?" She looked at him for a long moment, then turned away and walked to the window. Below, a delivery truck pulled up. Life, continuing like it always did, no matter how fragile it felt. I used to think if I stayed quiet, life would pass over us, that if I didn't make waves, no one would notice, and we'd be safe. Safe from what? From being someone's burden. Miles moved closer, but not too close. "You're not a burden. Neither of you are." "You don't get it, Miles," she said, her voice sharper than she meant it to be. "You grew up in mansions with staff. You don't know what it's like to be grateful for a 3-day extension on an electric bill, to water down soup so it stretches another day. You don't know what it's like to watch your child pretend she's not hungry just so you won't feel bad." Her voice cracked, but she swallowed the break. She hated crying in front of people. It made them pity you, and pity never lasted. Miles was quiet for a long time. "You're right," he said finally. "I don't know what that's like, but I want to." She turned to him, surprised, "Not because I'm trying to fix you, or make up for Lucas, but because I think," he paused, choosing his words with unusual care, "because I think the life I've built isn't actually living, it's managing, performing, and maybe I want more than that now." She blinked, heart thudding uncomfortably. "That sounds a lot like a man trying to save someone." "No," he said. "It's a man realizing you might be saving him." They stood in that strange, vulnerable quiet. When the doorbell rang, Clara flinched. Sadie stirred in the next room. Miles stepped back, straightened his jacket. "I'll get it." He opened the door to find a courier with a padded envelope. "Delivery for Mr. Whitaker." Miles signed without hesitation, closed the door slowly. The envelope was light, but felt like it held the weight of the world. Clara stared at it, her face unreadable. "Is that?" Miles nodded once. They sat on the couch, envelope between them like a secret neither wanted to unfold. Then, quietly, Clara spoke. "Whatever it says, I already know." "I know," Miles said, "but I need you to see it too." He broke the seal, unfolded the papers. His eyes scanned the lines until they landed on the sentence in bold. "Probability of paternity, 99.98%. He handed it to her. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, just read it slowly, then folded it back up and set it on the table like it was a receipt from the grocery store. "She always had his eyes," she said softly. Miles looked at her, then at the closed door to Sadie's room. "What does this change for you?" "Nothing." Clara's voice was clear, certain, and everything. Miles leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "She's his, but she's yours. Every good part of her came from you." Clara gave a sad smile. "She asked me once if she could call someone dad. Just try it out, like a new pair of shoes. I told her she'd know when it fit." Miles exhaled, slow. "I'd like to earn that. Not because I'm her uncle, but because I want to be the man who shows up." A long pause. "I'm not ready to trust that yet," Clara whispered. "I'm not asking for trust," he said. "Just time." From the hallway, the sound of small footsteps approached. Sadie appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, hair sticking out like she'd fought dragons in her sleep. Clara turned to her. "Hey, baby. We were just—" "I heard," Sadie said. Her voice was soft, I know he's my daddy's brother. Clara stood and pulled her daughter into her arms. I just wanted to say, if you want to stay, Mr. Miles, Sadie mumbled into her mother's shoulder. You can. Miles smiled, his throat thick. Thank you, Sadie. And if Mommy says it's okay. She pulled back and looked at him seriously. You can come to my school thing next week. I have to sing in front of everyone and it's really scary. I wouldn't miss it for the world, he said. Sadie nodded, satisfied, and scampered off to change. Clara watched her go, then turned to Miles. You just agreed to sit through an entire second-grade choral performance. I've sat through shareholder meetings that lasted 5 hours. I'll survive. She shook her head, a laugh escaping before she could stop it. Be careful, Miles, she said. Why? Because if you keep showing up like this, we might start needing you. He didn't look away. I'm counting on it. Outside, the clouds had lifted. Sunlight poured through the windows, soft and golden, warming the little apartment that suddenly didn't feel quite so small anymore. Clara stood at the tiny mirror above the sink, twisting her hair into a loose knot. She'd never been one for makeup, not since Sadie was born, but today, she brushed a little color onto her cheeks, dabbed a bit of gloss on her lips. She didn't know why. Maybe she just wanted to look like herself, only a little more put together. Maybe because Miles was coming again. She caught her own reflection staring back. The scarf, the tired eyes, the pale skin that hadn't seen sun in too long. Her reflection didn't say much, just watched. A knock at the door. Mommy, Sadie yelled from the living room. He's here. Clara took a breath. Steady, calm. She opened the door to find Miles standing there in jeans and a gray sweater, holding a white paper bag and a thermos. His hair was damp from the drizzle outside. I brought those muffins you liked, he said, and the fancy coffee you pretend not to like. Clara stepped aside, smiling despite herself. You're dangerously close to becoming predictable. Miles handed her the bag. I'll take my chances. Sadie rushed over, arms wide. Guess what? I'm gonna show you my solo. But you can't laugh. I would never, Miles said, kneeling. Do you want me to sit on the couch or stand for full dramatic effect? Couch, she declared. You need to hear every word. Clara watched them. There was something surreal about it, how quickly Sadie had attached herself to him, how natural he was with her, and yet, it didn't feel wrong, just unexpected. Sadie stood tall, cleared her throat like a Broadway star, and began to sing a shaky version of This Little Light of Mine. Off-key. Glorious. Miles applauded with his whole body, and Clara couldn't help but laugh when Sadie took a theatrical bow. That was incredible, Miles said. I think I might need your autograph before you get famous. Sadie beamed. Maybe. When she ran off to her room, presumably to change into a princess dress, Clara poured the coffee into mismatched mugs. She handed one to Miles, then leaned against the kitchen counter. She's been singing all morning, she said. Woke up humming. She's got a spark, he said, sipping. Just like you. Clara looked down, quiet for a beat. Miles, what exactly are we doing? He looked at her, not distracted, not dodging. What do you mean? This. She gestured around the room. You, me, Sadie. Is this a rescue mission? Some way to make peace with your brother's past? No, he said softly. It started that way, maybe, but not anymore. Clara crossed her arms. Then what is it? Miles didn't rush the answer. He set his coffee down. It's waking up every morning and wanting to see if Sadie remembered the words to her song, he said. It's wondering if you're feeling okay today. It's realizing I haven't looked forward to anything this consistently in years." She stared at him, lips parted slightly. "I've spent a long time building a life that looked perfect," he went on, "but it was hollow. This," he gestured between them, "this is messy, complicated, and I think it might be the most real thing I've touched in a decade." Clara looked away, blinking hard. "That's a big feeling for someone you've known a week. Big feelings don't wait for permission." She gave a soft, almost painful laugh. "You say that like I'm supposed to fall into your arms. I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" Miles took a slow breath. "Let me stay. Let me keep showing up. Let me earn a place, not just in Sadie's life but maybe yours too." Clara leaned back against the counter, trying not to let the weight of his words press too deep. "You want the truth? Always. I'm scared of wanting you here," she whispered. "Because if you stay, and then you go, she won't understand. And I'm not sure I'll recover." Miles stepped closer, not touching, just enough to let her feel the warmth of his presence. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "You don't know that." "I do." She looked up at him, eyes full of something between anger and hope. "People always go." "Then let me be the first one who doesn't." The room fell into silence, the kind that made everything else slow down. Outside, the drizzle had turned into steady rain, pattering softly on the window. Then Sadie's voice broke the quiet. "Mommy, where's my sparkly shoes? I can't find them." Clara smiled faintly. "Top of the closet, honey." Miles chuckled. Diva mode activated. "She gets it from me," Clara said, brushing past him toward the hallway. He watched her go, then looked around the room. The puzzle on the coffee table, the tiny art taped to the wall, the flickering light in the kitchen that blinked when the fridge turned on. None of it matched, none of it mattered. It felt like home. A few minutes later, Clara returned, Sadie close behind in a princess dress and glittery shoes 2 sizes too big. She held a toy microphone and curtsied dramatically. Miles stood, hand to his heart. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the star of the century," Sadie giggled. Clara met his eyes. Something had softened in her. Not trust, not yet, but maybe permission. She sat on the arm of the couch and quietly said, "You know, I haven't had dinner at a real restaurant in 7 years." Miles raised a brow. "Is that an invitation?" She shrugged. "More like a thought." "Then I'll turn it into one. And Sadie? We'll bring her. What kind of premiere would it be without the headliner?" Sadie twirled in place, completely unaware of the significance between the 2 adults in the room. And Miles knew this wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It was about the slow build, the quiet moments, the everyday proof that he wasn't going anywhere. He didn't need Clara to fall for him today. He just needed her to believe he'd still be here tomorrow. The savannah air was thick with salt and magnolia as Miles stepped out of his car, straightening his collar. The Whitaker Foundation board meeting was already underway, and he was 10 minutes late. Normally, that wouldn't matter, he was the CEO. But today wasn't normal. Today, he was about to walk into a room full of wolves. The lobby of the downtown Whitaker building smelled like money and old ambition. Crystal chandeliers, velvet seating, a brass plaque that read, "Built on Legacy." Miles wasn't thinking about legacy anymore. He was thinking about Clara, about Sadie, and the delicate, very real threat to both that was waiting on the 15th floor. When the elevator doors opened, the air grew colder, literally and figuratively. Miles stepped into the boardroom, greeted by a dozen eyes and a familiar voice that carried like a dagger. "There he is," Tori Whitaker said smoothly. "The prodigal brother. late to his own inheritance. Tori looked every bit the Southern belle, dressed in pale lavender, her blonde hair pulled into a perfect chignon. But beneath the surface, her expression was cool steel. "Tori," Miles said calmly, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Didn't realize this was a timed exam. You missed the vote, and yet, somehow, the building's still standing." A few members chuckled nervously. Tori didn't. She leaned forward. "We were discussing foundation assets, namely, how certain personal developments could affect the company's image." Miles kept his voice even. "Are we referring to my niece?" Tori's eyes narrowed. "We're referring to optics, to responsibilities, to the fact that the media's already whispering about Lucas's secret child, and how it could impact donations, trust, and everything we've built." Miles folded his hands. "What we've built means nothing if it's built on hiding the truth." "Oh, how noble," she scoffed. "The runaway heiress and her love child tugging at your heartstrings. How quaint." His jaw tightened. "Her name is Sadie," he said quietly. "And she's not some headline. She's a little girl who's been through more in 7 years than most people face in a lifetime, including you." Tori's smile faded. "We all have to make hard choices, Miles," she said. "Lucas made his. Now we clean up the fallout." "I'm not cleaning anything up," Miles said. "I'm stepping up, and if this board can't support that, then maybe it's time we redefine what the foundation stands for." The room fell silent, tense, watching. Tori leaned back, crossing her legs. "You always did like to play hero. Let's see how long it lasts." After the meeting, Miles didn't return to his office. He needed air and clarity, so he drove past the fountain downtown, past the marsh-lined roads of the historic district, all the way back to Clara's apartment. But when he knocked, no one answered. He called Clara's cell, straight to voicemail. A sinking weight lodged in his stomach. Then, just as he turned to leave, the door opened a crack. Sadie peeked through, face pale. "Hey," Miles said gently, kneeling. "You okay?" She nodded, but her lip trembled. "Mommy's sick. She said not to worry, but she won't get out of bed." Alarm spiked through him, but he kept his voice calm. "Is she running a fever?" "I don't know. She said it's just the tired kind of sick." He stood. "Can I come in?" Sadie nodded. Clara's bedroom door was half shut. The light inside was dim. Miles pushed it open slowly. Clara lay curled under the blanket, her skin pale, her eyes barely open. "Hey," he said softly. "Sadie said you weren't feeling well." She forced a weak smile. "It's just one of those days. Your treatment always hits me like a truck," she whispered. "I'll bounce back." Miles sat on the edge of the bed. "You don't have to bounce alone." Clara blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I hate her seeing me like this. She's scared." "I know," she whispered. "So am I." He reached for her hand. "Let me take her tonight. Just until tomorrow. Let you rest. She trusts me." Clara hesitated, then nodded. Miles kissed her forehead, then rose, found Sadie in the living room, and crouched beside her. "Hey, superstar. How about a sleepover at my place?" "Really?" Sadie's eyes lit up. "We'll get pancakes in the morning, but only if you promise to bring your best bedtime stories." She nodded solemnly. "I'm bringing 5. He smiled, but inside, something clenched. This wasn't about pancakes. This was the first real moment where he felt the weight of it all. Fatherhood, responsibility, love that came not through blood, but through showing up. He drove Sadie to his house near the river. She gasped when they walked in. "You live in a hotel?" "Not quite." He chuckled. But you can pretend. She ran across the hardwood floors, then stopped in front of a grand piano. Do you play? Badly. You should learn. Princesses like music. Noted. That night, after stories and snacks and Sadie finally drifted to sleep in the guest room, Miles stood in the doorway watching her. The room felt too big, her little frame too small in the bed. He texted Clara. She's asleep, safe. I'll bring her home in the morning. Then he looked around. $1,000 rug, imported linens, walls lined with abstract art, but no laughter, no pictures, no warmth, just silence. And for the first time, Miles felt what Clara must have known for years. Home isn't money, it's presence. And maybe it was finally time to fill the empty spaces. Clara's apartment was too quiet. The hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of old wood beneath the walls, it all seemed louder now that Sadie wasn't there. Clara sat curled on the couch, bundled in her softest blanket, a mug of peppermint tea cooling in her hands. Her body ached, a heavy, slow ache that came with each new round of treatment, as if her bones remembered everything she tried to forget. But more than the physical weight was the silence. No little feet pattering across the floor, no off-key humming from Sadie's bedroom, no requests for cereal at odd hours or made-up questions that only 7-year-olds could ask. It was amazing how empty love could make a room feel when it wasn't right beside you. Her phone buzzed beside her. Sadie just woke up asking for blueberry pancakes. I've been promoted to royal chef. Clara smiled, tapped back a reply. She likes them with syrup and powdered sugar. Good luck with that cleanup. A beat later, Miles replied. Worth it. She stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering, then typed, Thank you. For being there. He responded almost instantly. Always. That word. It scared her a little. It didn't promise perfection. It promised presence. And she wasn't sure which was harder to believe in. She was still staring at the message when a knock came at the door. 3 soft raps. Clara blinked, pulled herself up, wincing slightly, and shuffled to the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, her breath caught. Tori, draped in a caramel trench coat, designer bag in hand, hair swept back into a sleek twist. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a country club catalog. Tori, Clara said flatly. Clara. Tori returned with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Mind if I come in? Clara hesitated. If this is about Miles. Oh, it is, Tori said, already stepping past her. It very much is. Clara closed the door slowly and turned to find Tori examining the living room like she was evaluating a listing. Charming, Tori said. Very. Quaint. Clara crossed her arms. Say what you came to say. Tori turned, her expression sharpening. You think this is a fairy tale. You and your daughter worming your way into Miles's life like it's some Cinderella story. But this isn't a bedtime book, Clara. It's business, and I don't like seeing people mess with what's mine. Clara blinked. What's yours? The foundation, the Whitaker name, everything Lucas left behind, including the headlines we've worked years to manage. And now, suddenly, there's you. I didn't ask for any of this, Clara said evenly, and I didn't come looking for Miles. He came to us. Tori waved a hand. You're a clever woman. You know exactly how these things work. A sick mother, a cute kid, the grieving brother with a guilty conscience. It's practically scripted. Clara's voice lowered. Is this really about optics or about control? It's about protection, Tori said. Of the brand, of Miles. He's always been impulsive, emotional, It's what makes him vulnerable. Clara's patience thinned. He's not vulnerable. He's finally real, Tori smirked. Real doesn't pay dividends. There it was. The line between them drawn in ink and money. You came here to threaten me? Clara asked. Tori softened her voice, but it was like velvet pulled tight over steel. No, sweetheart, I came here to offer you a solution, a generous one. She pulled a folded paper from her bag and set it on the table. A private settlement, enough to cover your medical bills, a new apartment, tuition for Sadie. In exchange, you agree to fade out, quietly, no press, no lawsuits, no complications. Clara stared at the paper, then slowly, painfully, picked it up. She didn't even unfold it. Let me explain something to you, she said, her voice shaking, but firm. I raised my daughter with honesty, with dignity, without a dime of your family's fortune. And I didn't walk through 7 years of single motherhood and chemo just to be bought off like a mistake. Tori's smile faltered. I don't want your money, Clara said. I want respect, and so does Sadie. And I won't let anyone, including you, make her feel like she has to disappear to be accepted. For a second, the mask slipped, just slightly, and Tori's eyes flashed not anger, but something else, something hollow, brief, like a crack in a mirror. I gave you a chance to walk away, she said quietly, and I'm giving you a chance to grow a heart. Tori's lips parted like she might say more, but she didn't. She just turned, heels clicking against the tile, and let herself out without another word. Clara stood there, chest heaving, until the door clicked shut. She dropped the envelope into the trash without a second thought. Then she sat down slowly, her hands trembling. The fear was real, the fatigue, the weight of everything stacked on her shoulders, but there was a fire in her too, and today it burned brighter than her fear. Later that evening, after Sadie had returned and was busy arranging her stuffed animals in a tea party formation, Clara stood in the kitchen, staring out the window as Miles unpacked a grocery bag. Had a visitor today, she said. Oh? Tori. Miles froze. What did she want? To remind me that I don't belong in your world. He set the apples down slowly. Clara. She offered me a check. A new life. If I disappeared. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I didn't take it, she said. But not because I wanted to prove a point. Then why? She looked at him, eyes steady. Because I realized today, I do belong in your world. And more importantly, you belong in mine. Miles crossed the room, took her hand. I'm not letting anyone push you out, she smiled. I'm not letting anyone push me anymore. Their eyes held. No grand declarations, just quiet certainty. It was beginning. Something real. Something stronger than history or legacy or names etched into glass buildings. It was love, not in lightning bolts or sweeping music, but in a firm voice saying no, in a child singing off-key in a borrowed apartment, in showing up and staying. Clara hadn't planned to cry over a pantry shelf, but there she was, standing in Miles's kitchen, the late morning sun pooling across the marble counters, her eyes stinging as she stared at a small box of Sadie's favorite cereal, right next to a stack of miniature pancake mix and a row of princess-shaped fruit snacks, all neatly arranged, all clearly meant for them. Miles did this, she whispered under her breath, almost in disbelief. He was out back with Sadie, helping her plant a flower bed in the tiny yard behind the townhouse. Clara could hear her daughter's laughter through the open window, bright and bubbling. It lifted something in her and cracked something else wide open. She hadn't asked for any of this, not the help, not the gesture, Not the quiet way Miles had started weaving himself into the rhythm of their lives like he belonged there. But maybe, just maybe, he did. "Mom," Sadie's voice rang through the screen door. "Come see, I have dirt in my ears." Clara wiped her eyes quickly and stepped outside. Sadie stood proudly in a messy patch of overturned soil, holding a tiny shovel, her face streaked with mud. Miles, kneeling beside her, looked up with a sheepish grin. "Don't worry, the ears were an accident. The rest was very much intentional." Clara crossed her arms, feigning sternness. That was her last clean shirt. "Correction. It was clean," he said. Sadie twirled. "I named my flower Fiona." "Fiona?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "She looks like she has secrets," Sadie said, serious. Miles chuckled. "She gets that from you." Clara shook her head, laughing, then paused, noticing something different in Miles's posture. Something quieter. He stood, brushing dirt from his jeans. "Hey, can we talk for a second?" Clara nodded and followed him toward the porch steps, just out of earshot from Sadie. Miles looked out toward the fence. His voice was calm, but there was tension riding underneath. Tori filed an emergency motion. Clara's stomach dropped. What kind of motion? "She's petitioning to review the Whitaker Foundation's leadership structure. She's arguing that my personal entanglements make me a liability to the brand." Clara felt her heart rate climb. "She's trying to cut you out. She can't technically remove me," he said. "But she can create enough noise to force a board vote. And if that vote swings..." Clara stared at him. "Because of me." "Not because of you," he said gently. "Because of what I care about. And I'm not sorry for that. But you could lose everything." He turned to face her, eyes steady. "Clara, I already had everything. The house, the title, the stock options. It was all noise. This is the first time my life feels like mine." She looked away, jaw tight. "Miles, no, listen." His voice softened, but it didn't lose strength. "I love my work. I love what the foundation could be. But I'm not going to abandon you or Sadie to protect a version of myself I don't even recognize anymore." Clara looked up at him, eyes shining. "You really mean that?" "I do." A long beat. Then she exhaled, shaky and full. "I'm scared, Miles." He stepped closer. "So am I." She nodded. "But I don't want to run anymore." "Good," he said, "because we've got something worth standing still for." From behind them, Sadie called out, "Mommy, can we have ice cream for lunch?" Clara smiled through the tears. "Absolutely not." Miles leaned in. "What if we call it dairy therapy?" Sadie gasped dramatically. "Yes." And just like that, the weight lifted, if only for a moment. That afternoon, the three of them sat on the porch steps, eating waffle cones from a corner shop, laughing as Sadie managed to get more chocolate on her face than in her mouth. But Clara knew. This was the quiet before the storm. That night, after Sadie had gone to sleep, Clara stepped into Miles's office, his private space in the townhouse, tucked behind double glass doors. He sat at his desk, reviewing legal files, tension carved into his brow. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said. He looked up, surprised. "Never." Clara stepped closer. "I've been thinking." "Dangerous," he teased gently. She ignored the joke. "I want to fight with you." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Clara, I mean it," she said. "If Tori's going to throw everything at you, then I want to stand beside you. Not behind you, not hidden. With you." Miles stood, slowly. "You sure?" "No," she admitted. But I'm done waiting for the world to give me permission to matter. He moved toward her, took her hands. You already matter, he whispered. Then, tentatively, carefully, he kissed her. Not urgent, not rushed, just present, warm, real. When they pulled apart, Clara rested her forehead against his. Don't let me go, she whispered. I wouldn't know how. Outside, the savannah night stretched quiet and slow, the magnolia trees whispering in the breeze. Inside, two people stood at the edge of something new. Not perfect, not promised, but chosen. Together, the letter arrived folded in thick ivory stock, embossed with the Whitaker Foundation seal and sealed in crimson wax. Clara found it on the welcome mat of her apartment door the next morning, a courier envelope propped against the frame like an afterthought. No knock, no doorbell, just silence. She stared at it for a long moment before picking it up with the cautious reverence of someone handling something fragile, dangerous. Inside, the words were crisp, clinical, and devastating. An official notice. Tori Whitaker versus Miles Whitaker. Motion to challenge executive leadership based on irreconcilable conflicts of interest and personal liabilities. Clara read it twice, then a third time. Each line stung sharper than the last. Miles hadn't told her the motion had already been filed. He downplayed it, shielded her. And while a part of her understood why, another part felt betrayed. Because this wasn't just his fight anymore. It was theirs. She grabbed her keys, shoved the letter into her purse, and headed straight to the Whitaker building. No calls, no warning. The woman at the front desk offered a tight, polite smile. Miss Benson, Mr. Whitaker's in a meeting. I'll wait, Clara said, her tone leaving no room for debate. 20 minutes later, Miles stepped out of the glass boardroom, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, brow furrowed as he scrolled through emails. He looked up and stopped cold when he saw her. Clara? She held up the envelope. Why am I getting this from a courier instead of from you? He closed the distance quickly. I was going to tell you. When? Her voice cracked. After the vote? After Tori drags your name through every courtroom in Georgia? Miles sighed, glancing around before gently guiding her toward his office. Once the door shut behind them, Clara turned to face him, trembling. You promised you wouldn't shut me out, she said. I wasn't trying to, he said softly. I didn't want to worry you. Too late, she snapped, then immediately winced. I'm sorry. Miles, this affects me. It affects Sadie. He moved closer. I know, and I should have told you. I messed up. Silence stretched between them. Then Clara pulled the letter from her bag and dropped it on his desk. I want to testify, she said. Miles blinked. What? In the hearing, I want to speak. As a character witness, as a mother, as the woman you've stood by when you didn't have to. Miles rubbed the back of his neck. Clara, these hearings are brutal. The media, the scrutiny. Let them look, she said. I'm not hiding. Not for them, not for Tori, not for anyone. He stared at her, and in that moment, there was something unshakably fierce in her eyes. Not just resilience, not just fire, conviction. You're incredible, he whispered. She gave a small, sad smile. I'm tired, Miles. I'm tired of being looked past, talked over, dismissed. But if I can help you, if I can be the reason they see the truth, then I will. He moved closer, touched her cheek. Then we do this together. That night, Clara sat at the kitchen table, filling out her formal witness statement with a pen that kept slipping between her fingers. Sadie colored beside her, lost in a world of crayons and clouds. Mommy, yeah, baby. Sadie didn't look up. Is Miles gonna be in trouble? Clara paused. Why do you ask that? Because you look worried, she said simply, and worried faces mean something bad might happen. Clara set her pen down and turned toward her. Come here. Sadie crawled into her lap, nestling against her chest. You know how superheroes always have to face big scary things? Clara whispered. Like the storm monster in Starlight Riders? Exactly. But even when they're scared, they don't stop trying to do the right thing. That's what Miles is doing. He's being brave. And we're going to be brave with him. Sadie leaned back, thinking hard. Can I be a superhero too? Clara kissed the top of her head. You already are. The next morning, Clara and Miles met with Miles's lawyer, a steady-spoken woman named Nadine Coleman, with glasses perched on the edge of her nose and a binder thick enough to knock down a wall. I won't sugarcoat it, Nadine said, flipping through paperwork. Tori's strategy is character assassination. She's painting Miles as impulsive, emotionally compromised, financially reckless. The relationship with Clara, her biggest ammunition. Then we use it as strength, Clara said. Nadine looked up. You understand what this means, right? Public records, media questions, social speculation. I've had worse, Clara replied without flinching. I fought cancer with a toddler at my side. This is just noise. Miles's hand found hers beneath the table. She's not just my partner, he said. She's my proof. Nadine nodded slowly. Then let's give them a story that's not about scandal, but about transformation. The hearing was set for the following Thursday. 5 days. 5 days until Clara stepped into a room full of strangers and told the truth not just about Miles, but about herself. About the kind of love that wasn't lightning, but roots. About the family that chose each other in the quiet, ordinary moments. As they walked out of the office into the late afternoon light, Miles stopped her just outside the doors. You sure about this? He asked. Clara nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Then, without hesitation, she took his hand. The future wasn't certain, the path wasn't smooth, but they were walking it side by side. And for the first time, the unknown didn't feel like fear. It felt like freedom. The rain started just after midnight. Soft at first, like a whisper against the windows of Miles's townhouse, then heavier, until it poured in sheets, turning the streets of Savannah into rivers of glistening silver. Clara couldn't sleep. She lay on the living room couch, her body curled beneath a blanket, the sound of the storm syncing with the rhythm of her thoughts. Each drop against the glass felt like a clock ticking louder. 5 days until the hearing. 5 days until everything changed. Again. Upstairs, she could hear the faint creak of Miles pacing in his study. He was like her, restless under pressure, but where she wore her fear openly, he masked his with strategy, control, silence, and it worried her. After a moment, she slipped from the couch, tiptoed up the stairs, and paused outside the door. Light spilled from beneath it, golden and dim. She knocked softly. His voice came, rough and low. It's open. She stepped in. Miles stood by the window, hands in his pockets, suit jacket long abandoned. The top button of his shirt undone. He didn't turn when she entered, just stared out into the storm like it was hiding answers he couldn't reach. You okay? She asked. No, he said quietly, but I will be. Clara crossed the room and stood beside him. The city looked blurred through the glass, lights smudged by rain. Miles's reflection beside hers was tired, and somehow still beautiful. I've been trying to write my statement, he said. The board expects something, composed, controlled, confident. Sounds like you, Clara murmured. He gave a half laugh, then sighed. The problem is, none of this is controlled, none of it feels clean. I look at what's happening, and I can't pretend anymore that I've been the man they think I am. Clara looked at him gently. What kind of man do you think they see? The polished CEO, he said. Unshakable, strategic. The one who rebuilt a family name after my father and brother nearly destroyed it. And what kind of man do you see? She asked. Miles finally looked at her. The one who let his brother's mistakes turn him into a ghost, who forgot what it meant to feel anything until a little girl asked him if he knew her daddy. Clara reached for his hand, fingers weaving through his. You're not a ghost, she said. You're the man who stayed, the man who made room for love, even when it scared you. His voice was a whisper. What if I don't know how to be that man in front of them? Then let them meet the real you, she said. Not the version the board curated. You, the man who reads bedtime stories with silly voices and builds flower beds in the rain. He looked at her for a long time, then leaned in, forehead resting gently against hers. I'm terrified, he breathed. So am I, she said. They stood like that, in the quiet hush between thunder, and for a moment, the world felt still. The next morning arrived gray and heavy, the sky still dripping as if the clouds hadn't quite finished their work. Clara dressed Sadie for school, helping her into her boots while humming softly. Sadie's backpack was already packed. She was eager for show and tell. I'm bringing Fiona, she said, holding up a photo of her flower bed. She's growing. You're growing too, Clara said, tying her daughter's laces. Right into a brave little girl. Sadie beamed, then tilted her head. Is Miles scared of the big room with the chairs? You mean the courtroom? Sadie nodded. Clara thought for a moment. I think he's nervous, but he's brave too. Sadie was quiet for a beat. Can I draw him a lucky picture? Clara's heart tugged. That would mean the world to him. Later that day, Miles stood in his office, staring down at the crayon masterpiece Sadie had delivered through Cal, their attorney, a stick figure with a tie, a heart, and the words, for Miles, you're my hero. He blinked once, twice, then smiled, and folded the picture carefully into his briefcase. That evening, the final prep meeting with Nadine ran late. Cal's voice was firm but fair. Tori's team will go for blood. They'll bring up your past relationships, Lucas's missteps, even your parents' scandals. They'll imply your interest in Sadie is more about guilt than love. Let them, Miles said. I'm not here to be perfect. I'm here to be honest. Nadine glanced at Clara. You still willing to take the stand? Clara nodded. Yes. Nadine sighed. Then we lead with heart. No spin, no angles, just truth. Miles leaned back in his chair. Good, because that's all I have left. Cal looked between them. I hope you both know what you're walking into. Clara reached over and took Miles's hand. We're walking in together, she said. And for the first time in days, Miles felt steady, not because he had the right words, not because the odds were in his favor, but because Clara was right there beside him. The battle ahead was looming, but so was something bigger. The quiet, steady birth of a future they were choosing, one truth, one fight, one love at a time. The courtroom was colder than Clara expected, not in temperature but in tone. It was the kind of space designed to feel sterile, detached, factual, as if lives weren't unraveling in real time between its polished walls. Clara sat in the second row behind the defense table, her hands folded tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. Sadie was at home with Cal's wife, who had volunteered to watch her for the day. Clara had packed her daughter's favorite stuffed giraffe and kissed her forehead twice before leaving, whispering, "Be brave, baby." Just like Fiona, Miles sat beside Nadine at the table, sharp in a navy suit that couldn't mask the fatigue shadowing his eyes. He glanced back at Clara once before the hearing started. It wasn't a long look, just long enough to say, "You're here. That's enough." Then the bailiff announced the judge, and the room stood. Clara rose with them, heart hammering as the gavel struck wood, and Judge Madeline Price took her seat. An older black woman with commanding eyes and a tone that left no room for games. The case was called. The motion to re-examine executive leadership within the Whitaker Foundation due to personal conflicts of interest was read aloud, and then it began. Tori's attorney was poised and pleasant, too pleasant. She stood with a smile and began listing Miles's alleged instability. His connection to Clara, his emotional entanglement with Sadie, his erratic personal decisions as evidence of declining judgment. He has compromised the boundaries of his role as CEO, the attorney said. His actions, while perhaps admirable on a human level, create legal vulnerabilities for the foundation and suggest a conflict of interest that cannot be ignored. Clara felt the heat rise in her chest, then came Miles's side. Nadine stood, calm and confident. She spoke of Miles's track record, his clean leadership, his success in recovering the company's integrity after Lucas's scandals. She explained how no funds had been misused, no bylaws broken. She noted that Miles had recused himself from all internal decisions related to Clara and Sadie out of transparency. Then, she paused. "And now," Nadine said, "we'd like to present a statement from Clara Monroe." Clara stood on legs that didn't feel like her own. She walked to the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, and took her oath, then sat down, back straight, palms flat against her thighs. Nadine stepped forward. "Miss Monroe, how did you first meet Mr. Whitaker?" "At the cemetery," Clara said quietly. "He was visiting his brother's grave. I was there with my daughter, your daughter Sadie, who is the biological child of Lucas Whitaker, correct?" Clara nodded. "Yes, but Lucas never knew her. He left before I could tell him." "And Mr. Miles Whitaker?" "He stayed," she said, her voice steadied. "He showed up. He took responsibility for a child that wasn't his. He helped me when I couldn't help myself, not out of obligation, out of heart." There was a pause. Nadine stepped back. Judge Price looked at Clara. "Do you believe Mr. Whitaker's relationship with your daughter compromises his ability to lead the foundation?" Clara blinked back sudden tears. "No, Your Honor. I think it defines his ability." "How so?" "Because for the first time, the foundation has someone leading it who doesn't just protect a legacy, he lives it. He knows what it means to repair damage, to take something broken and build trust again, not just in business, but in people." A hush fell over the courtroom. Judge Price nodded slowly. "Thank you, Miss Monroe." Clara stepped down, legs shaking beneath her skirt, but she didn't stumble. She walked back to her seat, and when she sat beside Miles, he reached under the table and gripped her hand tightly. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The opposing attorney returned for rebuttal, but the tone had shifted. The room had shifted. The story wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about transformation. Miles didn't look like a reckless CEO. He looked like a man who'd faced loss and chosen love. When court adjourned for the day, Clara and Miles stepped into the hallway together. The rain had started again, soft and persistent. Clara looked up at him. "Did I say too much?" "No," Miles said quietly. You said everything." Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, Sadie's drawing. He held it up. "She said I'm her hero," he whispered. "But the truth is, I became one because of you." Clara stared at him, emotion swelling in her chest until she could barely speak. "She saved us," she finally said. "No," Miles said. "You did." Then they stood in silence, side by side, as the storm whispered around them. The turning point had come not just in court, but in their hearts, and there was no turning back. The next morning came wrapped in a thick fog that rolled over Savannah like a held breath. The kind that makes everything feel suspended: time, sound, certainty. Miles stood at the window of his office, staring out at the slow crawl of headlights through the mist. His tie was loose, his coffee untouched. Nadine's voice echoed in his head from the night before. Tomorrow's cross-examination will be their last play. They'll go hard. They'll aim for emotional collapse. He could handle pressure. He'd built his name under it. But this was different. This wasn't about strategy or stockholder trust. This was about truth, and the truth had never been neat. Clara arrived just before 8. She wore a pale blue blouse, her hair swept back, her eyes steady but shadowed. When she walked in, Miles looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense in a world slowly tilting sideways. "They're going to push today," he said, voice low. "I know," she replied, "but they're pushing against something that won't break." They sat together in the quiet for a moment, her hand finding his without needing direction. There was something deeply grounding about her silence, not avoidance, but presence. Clara didn't fill space with reassurances. She just stayed. And sometimes, that was everything. Court resumed just after 9. Tori sat stiff and polished on the plaintiff's side, her lips drawn tight, her expression unreadable. Clara watched her closely. Something was off: a slight twitch in her fingers, the way her lawyer kept glancing nervously toward her. It wasn't arrogance, it was urgency. And then it began. The plaintiff's attorney called their surprise witness, a financial advisor from the foundation, who claimed Miles had greenlit an internal grant for Clara's housing without board approval. Clara's breath caught. That wasn't true. She turned to look at Miles, whose jaw had tightened, but he didn't flinch. Nadine stood. "Your Honor, we request a recess to verify these claims." Judge Price nodded once. 15 minutes, no longer. In the hallway, Nadine spun toward Miles. "Tell me that's not real." "It's not," he said. "I authorized the review, but I wasn't the one who approved the grant disbursement. That came from HR protocol after her medical documentation was filed." Clara frowned. "So why would someone lie about that?" Nadine's face darkened. "Because someone paid them to." Cal had already pulled out his phone. "I'll get into the internal approval logs. If there's a timestamp discrepancy, it'll show." Clara's stomach twisted. "They're trying to paint me as a pawn, like I seduced him for financial gain." Miles turned sharply toward her. "No one in that courtroom believes that. Not after what they saw yesterday. But if they spin the optics," she started. "They won't win on optics," Nadine cut in. "They'll win on paper, and right now, they're trying to doctor it." Miles took Clara's hand again. "Let them try." The courtroom doors opened again. 15 minutes. Back inside, Cal passed a slip of paper to Nadine as they retook their seats. She stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence that the plaintiff's witness submitted a falsified timestamp. Our IT department retrieved the original metadata. The grant was approved per standard foundation policy. Mr. Whitaker had no direct involvement." Judge Price raised a brow. "Do you have the documentation?" It's been submitted to the court, Nadine confirmed. There was a murmur in the gallery. Tori's attorney went pale. Judge Price exhaled. Then this court considers the previous testimony void, and I'd advise counsel to remember perjury carries real consequences. Tori shifted in her seat. Her expression cracked just a hair. A tight line at the corner of her mouth, a tremble in her jaw, and Clara saw it. Not rage, not entitlement, fear. Tori knew the foundation she'd stood on wasn't solid anymore. Her grip was slipping. When court recessed for lunch, Miles didn't return to the office. He and Clara walked down the quiet street instead, past the iron gates and weeping oaks, toward the bench by the water they'd once passed on a night just like this. "She's unraveling," Clara said softly. "She was always unraveling," Miles replied. "Now people are just starting to see it." Clara leaned back against the bench, the breeze catching her blouse. "You think the board will still stand with you?" Miles looked at her. "Some will, others won't. But that's not what I'm thinking about right now." She turned. "What are you thinking about?" His eyes searched hers. "You, Sadie. The life we're building, that's not something I'm willing to lose. Not for a title, not for legacy, not for anything." Clara's throat tightened. "You might lose it anyway. Not if I fight the right way." She watched him for a moment. The way his eyes held conviction without arrogance. The way his presence calmed her even in the middle of chaos. "Then I'll fight with you," she whispered. He reached over and brushed his fingers along her jaw. "You already are." And in the space between uncertainty and trust, something unshakable was taking root. They didn't have a verdict yet, but they had a truth no one could refute. Love steady, unpolished, unflinching, and that, somehow, was enough. The final hearing was set for Friday morning. 3 days for everything to come, to light truth, lies, motives, and the fragile lines between them. Miles had faced merger battles, hostile takeovers, press scandals, but never anything like this. Because this wasn't business. This was family. And family was never clean. Clara stood in the kitchen late Monday night, stirring tea she hadn't touched. The moonlight filtered through the windows, casting quiet shadows across the hardwood floor. Sadie was asleep upstairs, tucked beneath a quilt her grandmother had sewn years before she was born. Miles was reading case notes at the counter, eyes tracing each word like they might shift if he looked away. Clara broke the silence. "I talked to the clerk at the courthouse today." Miles looked up, concerned. "She said someone came in asking for the sealed files from Lucas's estate, the ones that were supposed to be archived." He set down the folder. "Who?" She wouldn't say. Said they showed a court order, but she looked uncomfortable, like something wasn't right. Miles stood slowly. Only 2 people could have filed that motion, Tori, or someone on the board. Clara nodded. "She's desperate. She knows she's losing public ground, so now she's digging." "Let her dig," he said. "There's nothing there that can hurt us." But even as he said it, doubt flickered in his chest, because Lucas had lived messily, and anything buried with him might not stay buried long. By Tuesday afternoon, Cal returned from a call with the Foundation's internal counsel, looking pale. "They're trying to invalidate Sadie's paternity," he said bluntly. Tori's team submitted a new claim that a second man, some ex-boyfriend of Clara's, is contesting that Lucas was the father. Clara's mouth dropped open. That's insane. No one." Cal held up a hand. "We're already filing to dismiss. The man in question never lived in Savannah. He passed away 5 years ago. It's a fabricated link. But the implication is all they need to stir up enough confusion to make the judge request further DNA analysis." Miles's voice was tight. They want to delay the ruling. And cast doubt, Cal added, even if just in the press. Clara felt the walls of her chest begin to close in. She's going to keep trying to tear everything apart. Nadine stepped in from the hallway, holding a printed statement. Which is why we're not going to react. We're going to lead. I'm preparing a press release now. And Miles, she looked him dead in the eye. You're going to hold a press conference tomorrow morning. Miles blinked. A what? We cut the narrative off at the source, she said. You get ahead of it. Tell the truth. Not as CEO. Not as Lucas's brother. Just as you. A man who didn't choose this but chose to stay. There was a beat of silence. Clara whispered, Are you sure that won't make things worse? Nadine answered for him. It's already bad, but if you let her control the story, you'll lose more than just the company. You'll lose the people's trust. That matters especially to a judge who's watching public impact. Miles nodded slowly, then firmer. Okay, I'll do it. Clara watched his shoulders rise, then settle. That subtle shift from fear into decision. He wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was protecting the life they were building. The next morning, Miles stood on the steps of the Whitaker Foundation's headquarters. A gray sky pressed low above him. Reporters clustered like a sea of anxious energy. He didn't have a teleprompter, no press aide feeding him lines, just a worn piece of paper in his hand. And Clara, standing at the edge of the crowd, her eyes locked on his. Miles looked into the cameras and began. My name is Miles Whitaker. I didn't expect to be here, certainly not like this. I didn't expect to fall in love with a little girl I met at my brother's grave, or with the woman who raised her with more strength and grace than I've ever seen in my life. Flashbulbs, clicks, silence. I didn't expect to be accused, questioned, or challenged like this, but I'm not afraid. Because everything I've done has been rooted in love, not legacy. He paused. My brother made choices I can't defend, but the day I met Sadie, something changed. She didn't ask for proof. She didn't ask for blood. She just asked, Did you know my daddy? And in that moment, I knew I could be something her real father never had the chance to become present. More flashes, some reporters lowering their cameras now, just listening. I've been accused of crossing boundaries, of leading with emotion instead of reason, and maybe I have, but maybe that's exactly what we need more of, in boardrooms, in courtrooms, in families. He folded the paper in half. And to anyone questioning whether my love for Sadie or Clara is real, ask them. Ask the woman who stood by me when I had nothing left to hide behind. Ask the little girl who gave me a picture with the words, You're my hero. He stepped back. That's all I have to say. No shouted questions, no chaos, just stillness. And Clara, at the edge of the crowd, smiling with her whole heart. The battle wasn't over. But the tide? It had just turned. Friday morning arrived with a stillness that felt like something sacred. No rain, no wind, just the quiet hush of a savannah sunrise breaking through the moss-draped trees. The city held its breath as Miles walked into the courthouse, hand in hand with Clara. Sadie had drawn him another picture the night before this time of the three of them standing under a rainbow, holding hands. In crayon, she had written, You're my real dad because you love me like one. It was tucked safely in his inside coat pocket, right over his heart. Inside the courtroom, the air was charged. The final hearing, the verdict. The board was present. Press stood beyond the windows like ghosts waiting for news to carry. Nadine, composed as ever, arranged the final documents on the desk. Cal sat behind them, arms crossed, face unreadable. And across the room, Tori. She looked different, less composed, Her designer jacket fit too tight at the shoulders. Her hair, though styled, looked like it had been rushed, and her lawyer, visibly tense. Judge Price entered. Everyone stood, and the final chapter began. "We've reviewed the final motions," the judge said, "and considered the credibility of all testimony, including the most recent claims filed by the plaintiff." She looked directly at Tori. "Let me be clear. This court does not tolerate manipulation or false evidence. The alleged paternity challenge was not only without foundation, it was submitted under questionable means. We are opening an inquiry into those actions." Tori blinked but said nothing. Her lips tightened into a fine line. Clara's heart raced. Judge Price turned to Miles. "Mr. Whitaker, while your personal involvement in this matter could have constituted a conflict of interest, the court finds no legal or financial misconduct. Your transparency, your documented recusal from internal decisions, and your testimony from both staff and outside counsel confirm this." Miles didn't react. He just held Clara's hand a little tighter. "The court finds no grounds to remove Mr. Whitaker from his position as CEO of the Whitaker Foundation." A ripple moved through the courtroom, but the judge wasn't done. "However," she continued, "this hearing wasn't just about the board. It was about something deeper. About family, about legacy, and about the difference between inheriting power and earning it." Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at Clara, then back at Miles. "This court encourages the foundation to consider the creation of a subcommittee focused on community development and child welfare, to be led by Ms. Monroe, should she accept the position. It is clear to this court that she has not only survived hardship, but used it to lift others." Clara blinked, stunned. The judge gave a small nod. "Court is adjourned." The gavel fell. The room exhaled all at once. Tori stood slowly, her eyes flicking toward Miles and Clara. For a moment, something flickered there, not hatred, not even defeat, regret. She didn't speak. She just turned and walked out, heels clicking across the marble floor like the final notes of a broken symphony. Clara stood there, frozen. Miles turned to her. "Did you hear what she said? Community Development Committee," Clara whispered. "She wants me to help. She sees what I've seen since the moment I met you," he said. "You're not just strong, you're purposeful." Tears filled Clara's eyes. "This doesn't feel real." He reached into his coat and pulled out Sadie's crayon drawing. "It is," he said softly. "Every bit of it." She pressed a hand over her mouth, emotion crashing over her like waves she couldn't hold back. "We made it." He stepped closer. "No, you made it. I just followed your light." She leaned in, forehead to his chest, both of them breathing in the quiet between heartbeats. And then gently he whispered, "I want to take you both home. Not just for tonight, but for always." Clara looked up. "Miles, I don't have a ring yet," he said, voice thick. "But I have a daughter who already calls me Dad, and I have a woman who brought life back into my world. That's everything." Her smile broke through tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Outside, as they stepped into the soft warmth of the morning sun, reporters surged forward, but Clara didn't hear them. All she heard was Sadie's voice in her mind. "Did you know my daddy?" "Yes, baby. He knows now, and he never stopped choosing us." Autumn swept into Savannah like a soft sigh, cooler mornings, golden light, and the hush of change in the air. Spanish moss trembled in the breeze, and leaves scattered across Whitaker Square like confetti from a celebration long overdue. It had been 3 months since the ruling. 3 months since the courtroom had fallen silent, and the judge had spoken the words that rerouted 3 lives forever. In that time, the world had slowed just enough for Miles to exhale, Clara to settle, and Sadie to grow into her laughter again. Today, they were walking up the same winding path to Bonaventure Cemetery. Just like that first day, but this time, Sadie wasn't alone. She held Miles's hand tightly, her curls bouncing with each step, wearing a pale yellow dress Clara had picked out just that morning. In her other hand, she carried a small bouquet of sunflowers, Lucas's favorite. "Is Daddy's stone still shiny?" Sadie asked as they approached. Clara smiled softly. "It is. You remember how to brush it, right?" Sadie nodded solemnly. "Like you showed me. With love." The grave looked just the same, quiet, dignified. The chiseled letters of Lucas Whitaker's name worn slightly from the weather but still proud. Beneath it, someone had placed a single photograph in a protective case. Miles, Clara, and Sadie standing in front of the courthouse, smiling like they'd been smiling forever. Sadie knelt gently, arranging the flowers and brushing the top of the stone with her sleeve. Then she stood and looked up at Miles. "I wrote him something," she said. "You did?" he asked gently. She pulled a folded piece of notebook paper from her small purse and began to read, her voice soft but sure. "Dear Daddy, I didn't know you very long, but I know you gave me someone even better, your brother. He didn't have to be my daddy, but he said yes anyway. He holds my hand, he tucks me in, and he listens when I talk a lot, even when he's tired. I think you would be proud. I'm proud too. Thank you for giving me to him. Love, Sadie." Clara pressed her hand to her heart. Miles crouched beside her and whispered, "Can I keep that?" Sadie handed him the letter with a shy nod. "It's yours now." As they stood to leave, Miles lingered for a moment. Clara gave him space, stepping aside to let the quiet find him. He crouched again and placed a hand on the cold stone. "You were a mess, Lucas, but you loved her, and somehow, you knew she'd need someone like me. I still don't know how I deserve this, but I'm doing everything I can not to let it go." He paused. "She's safe now. They both are." Then he rose, turned, and walked back to the 2 people waiting for him like a horizon. Later that afternoon, they returned to the foundation. Clara had accepted the role on the new Community Impact Committee, and today was her first official board presentation. She stood in front of the room, speaking with calm authority about after-school programs, single mother housing initiatives, and expanding access to therapy for children dealing with loss. She didn't stammer, she didn't shake, because when you've already walked through fire, you stop fearing the heat. After the presentation, Miles pulled her aside. "I want to show you something," he said. He led her to the rooftop garden of the foundation building. The sun was just beginning to dip, casting streaks of amber over the city skyline. In the center of the terrace, a small table was set. Candles, wine, music drifting faintly from a speaker hidden behind a planter box. Clara blinked, unsure. "What is this?" He stepped forward, voice hushed. "A promise I owe you." Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it slowly. Inside, nestled in satin, was a ring shaped like a blooming magnolia. The petals carved in gold, the center stone, a soft amber diamond that glowed like sunlight through a whiskey glass. "I never knew how much I wanted a family until the day I met Sadie," he said. "And I never believed I deserved one until I met you. Clara Monroe, will you marry me?" Her hands flew to her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, barely able to breathe. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into his arms as the sky blushed behind them and the city exhaled below. Later that night, in the quiet of their home, Clara watched Sadie sleep. Her daughter's chest rose and fell with peace that once seemed impossible. The kind of peace you earn, the kind you fight for. Miles wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You okay?" he murmured. She nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" She smiled. "About the first time she asked you." His brow furrowed. "Asked me what?" Clara turned to face him, eyes soft with memory. "Did you know my daddy?" He nodded slowly. "She asked it with so much hope," Clara said. "And now, she doesn't have to ask anymore." Miles leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. "Because now, she knows." And in the soft dark of that moment, surrounded by everything they had built out of grief and grace, the silence said it best. Family isn't always born. Sometimes it's chosen. And when it is, it's the most beautiful kind of love story there is.